Imagine a biological engine that never shuts off and a sensory system that treats a whisper like a jet engine. Did you know that nearly 20% of infants are born with a nervous system so highly reactive that the mere sight of a new toy can trigger a full-scale physical crisis? Why do some babies drift into a peaceful sleep during a roaring thunderstorm, while others scream as if the world is ending just because a door closed down the hall? Is the difference between a calm child and a difficult one really a matter of parenting, luck, or is there a hidden biological blueprint written into their brain before they even take their first breath? Your baby has been screaming for 3 hours straight. You have tried everything in your power. You fed them and changed them and rocked them until your arms felt like lead. Yet they continue to cry with a desperate intensity that vibrates through your very bones. Meanwhile, you remember your neighbor telling you just yesterday how her baby never causes a single moment of trouble. Now you are standing in the middle of your kitchen at 3 in the morning, wondering what you are doing wrong. I want you to hear this clearly, because it is the most important thing you will learn today. You are not doing anything wrong. What I am about to tell you is not just a comfort or a kind word. This is pure science, and it will completely transform the way you look at your child and yourself. Please stay with me until the very end of this video. The final section explains a fundamental truth that most pediatricians and parenting books never even mention. This knowledge will finally lift the heavy weight of guilt off your shoulders. Picture a scene in your mind. You walk into a room where a family is playing together. An 8-month-old baby is sitting on the couch. He is being passed from hand to hand among strangers. People are tickling him and making loud, funny faces. The baby looks at all of this with an incredible sense of calm. He smiles occasionally, and the noise does not startle him at all. The parents look rested and happy as they laugh with their guests. They say he is absolute gold, and they barely even know there is a baby in the house. Now imagine a different scene with a different baby. The moment a stranger leans over the stroller to say hello, everything changes. The baby's tiny fists clench tight, and his back arches like a bow. His breathing quickens, and his face turns a deep shade of red. A second later, a scream erupts that can be heard 3 rooms away. The exhausted mother quickly apologizes to the startled guest. She says her child is just very difficult. The guests nod with a polite smile, but you can see the judgment hiding in their eyes. This is where the biggest mistake in parenting begins. Adults subconsciously and instantly form an opinion based on what they see. They decide the first child is good and the second child is troublesome. They assume the first parents are experts and the second parents are doing something wrong. These labels stick like glue, and they can last for a lifetime. But what if those labels are fundamentally incorrect? What if the difference between an easy baby and a difficult one has nothing to do with character? What if it is not the result of parenting or a stroke of good luck? What if there is something else happening beneath the surface that is invisible and deeply biological? We are talking about the nervous system. Most people view infant behavior as something purely emotional. They think a baby is being moody or stubborn or demanding attention. But if you look deeper, you will find that it is actually a matter of neurology. The way a child reacts to the world is dictated by how their nervous system is wired. One baby can sleep through the loud roar of a vacuum cleaner. Another baby wakes up the moment a door is closed at the other end of the hallway. One baby looks at a stranger with curiosity. Another baby buries their face in their mother's shoulder, as if that stranger is a lethal threat. One child handles being moved from a crib to a lap without a care. Another child reacts to any change in position, as if the ground is vanishing beneath their feet. This is not bad behavior. These are different thresholds of sensitivity and different speeds of processing information. These are simply different nervous systems meeting the exact same world. Temperament does not start as a blank slate. In the 1950s, 2 American psychiatrists named Alexander Thomas and Stella Chess began a massive study. They observed children from the moment of their birth and followed them for many years. They were the ones who introduced the terms easy and difficult and slow to warm up into our vocabulary. But their most important discovery was not the labels themselves. The main conclusion was that children are born inherently different. Even in the first weeks of life, babies show different intensities in their reactions. They have different levels of adaptability and different rhythms in their biological processes. Some have a high threshold for noise, while others have a very low one. This is not the result of how they were raised. These are the starting conditions of their life. Parents do not write the character of a child from scratch. They work with the material that is already there. For many parents of difficult children, this realization feels like a massive relief. Behind closed doors, so many parents quietly ask themselves why they are failing. They wonder why their friend's baby sleeps through the night while theirs does not. They wonder why other babies smile at everyone while theirs screams at the sight of a grandmother. The answer is often very simple. You did not create this sensitivity. You are simply raising a child whose nervous system experiences the world at a much higher volume. In the 1980s and 90s, a psychologist named Jerome Kagan conducted research that changed everything. He observed infants as they were introduced to unfamiliar smells and sounds and objects. Some babies reacted intensely by kicking their legs and crying and arching their backs. Others watched the exact same things with total composure. Kagan called the first group high-reactive children. He noted that over time, many of these babies grew into children who struggled with new situations. They took longer to get used to strangers and felt changes very deeply. This is not a pathology or a disorder. It is a specific way of processing information. The brain of a high-reactive child notices novelty faster and reacts more intensely. It also takes much longer for their system to return to a state of calm. Think about how this changes the perspective. A baby who bursts into tears when a bright light is turned on is not spoiled. Their system just received a signal that was far too strong for them to handle. A child who refuses to go to a stranger is not being antisocial. Their nervous system identifies the stranger as a source of unpredictability and sends out a warning. A little one who cries at every change in environment is not being fussy. Their brain simply requires more time to adapt to the transition. We also have to remember that the human brain is unfinished at birth. The specific areas of the brain that allow an adult to self-regulate are not yet functioning in a baby. The ability to calm down and shift attention and manage overwhelming emotions is still being built. These structures literally form through the process of living and interacting. When a child crosses the line into a full crying fit, they physically cannot stop through willpower. That willpower does not exist yet. They need help from the outside world to find their balance. This is what scientists call co-regulation. It is when an adult uses their own calm and voice and touch to lend the child the regulation they cannot produce alone. This is why the early months of life are so deeply connected to relationships. Your voice and the rhythm of your rocking and the way you hold them all matter. The way you notice their tiredness before it turns into a tantrum is vital work. External soothing slowly becomes the internal structure of the child's mind. The baby's brain is literally being built through these experiences of being calmed. Crying is not a complaint, but a vital signal. Mary Ainsworth was a pioneer in the science of attachment. She discovered something quite paradoxical about babies. The most securely attached infants were not necessarily the calmest ones. They cried when their mothers left the room. They signaled their distress and they demanded a response. But when the mother returned, they were able to calm down much faster. Their brains had already learned that this person will come back. They learned that it is safe to signal their needs because help is on the way. Therefore, a crying child is not always a sign of a problem. Sometimes it is a sign of a healthy and working attachment. An infant who sobs when you walk away is not trying to test you. Their nervous system is honestly telling you that you are a part of their regulation system. Without you, they feel biologically unsafe. There was a famous experiment called the still face experiment. Researchers asked mothers to become emotionally blank for a few seconds while looking at their babies. The mothers stopped smiling and stopped responding and stopped reacting. The infants reacted almost instantly to this change. They tried everything to regain contact by reaching out and smiling and making sounds. When that did not work, they began to show extreme distress and started to cry. This is not manipulation. This is a deep biological need for the presence and responsiveness of another human being. Here's a thought that might change your entire perspective. A high-reactive child does not have a difficult character. They simply have much more sensitive sensors. They signal faster and louder and more honestly than other children. They tell you about an overload long before another child would even notice a problem. Yes, this is incredibly exhausting for the parents. The parents of these children know this exhaustion better than anyone else. But there is a hidden silver lining to this challenge. A sensitive child forces you to become a very precise observer. You begin to distinguish between a look that means I am getting tired and a look that means I am interested. You learn the difference between a yawn from exhaustion and a yawn from stress. You feel exactly which kind of rocking soothes them and which kind irritates them further. You're learning to read the nervous system of a human being in real time. Some of the most attentive and empathetic parents are those who raised a difficult child. This is not because they were naturally better than others. It is because their child gave them no choice but to pay close attention. An easy child carries a hidden risk of being overlooked. A calm and adaptive child who asks for nothing can easily become emotionally invisible. If they are not screaming, people assume everything is perfectly fine. If they are not demanding, then people assume they do not have needs. Adults might interact with them less or check on their emotional state less often. They think the child is handling everything on their own. But all children, even the calmest ones, build their brains through interaction. They need someone to look into their eyes and respond to their signals. They need the emotional presence of an adult just as much as a sensitive child does. An easy child simply does not shout for it as loudly. Thomas and Chess introduced a concept called goodness of fit. This means that a child's development is not just about their temperament or just about their environment. It is about how well those two things match each other. A highly sensitive child in a chaotic and loud environment will look increasingly stressed and difficult. That same child in a calm and rhythmic environment will appear to transform. Their temperament has not disappeared, but the environment has stopped clashing with their needs. Imagine a child with incredibly sharp hearing who is taken to a crowded mall every day. He will cry, and he will be labeled as a difficult child. But if you place that same child in a quiet room with one friend, you see a different person. It is the same temperament, but a different context leads to a different result. This is why labels are so dangerous for a developing mind. If a child is labeled as difficult, adults start to approach them with tension before anything even happens. They rush, and they expect the worst, and they react more sharply to every signal. This creates even more stress for the child and the parents and the relationship. But if we reframe the situation, it changes everything. Instead of saying he is difficult, we say he is sensitive and needs more time for transitions. We say she does better in a quiet environment. Suddenly, there is space for a warning before a change and a pause for adaptation. The child who was seen as a problem begins to open up in a new way. Temperament is not a life sentence. High reactivity is not a fixed destiny for a human being. The brain possesses incredible plasticity, especially during the first years of life. The repeated experience of co-regulation builds physical neural pathways. When an adult helps a child move from overload back to calm over and over again, the brain learns. The nervous system does not learn instantly or in a straight line, but it does learn. External soothing eventually becomes an internal structure of the mind. A child who has been rescued from overload many times will eventually handle it better alone. They do not outgrow their sensitivity, but their brain accumulates the experience of returning to safety. We must always maintain a clear and sober perspective on development. Not every intense child is just a matter of temperament. Not every calm child is automatically thriving. The most important thing to watch for is the pattern of movement. Can the child calm down with the help of an adult, even if it takes time? Do they have periods where they are awake and relaxed? Do they react to voices and faces and touch? Are they slowly adapting to repeated situations over time? Or does every single day feel like a chaotic mess without any logic? If a child consistently cannot be calmed by anyone or loses skills they once had, you should take note. If they do not make eye contact or respond to the world around them, it might be more than temperament. This is information to discuss with a pediatrician or a development specialist. It is not a reason to panic, but a reason to seek deeper understanding. Keep this in mind the next time you are near a crying baby. That child is not behaving badly. They are not trying to manipulate you or test your patience. They are doing the only thing they are capable of doing at that moment. They are honestly reporting the state of their nervous system at the top of their lungs. They are saying that the world is too much right now. or they need your presence. They are saying that something has changed and they were not ready for it. Crying is not a performance, but a form of communication. It is the earliest and most honest form of communication a human can offer. When an adult hears a signal instead of a problem, everything changes. The irritation and the guilt and the feeling of failure begin to fade away. Instead, you start to ask what is happening with this tiny human being. You are meeting a human mind in its very earliest form. Behind every scream and every yawn and every arched back is a developing brain. That brain is learning how predictable the world is and if people can be counted on. It is learning if its signals of discomfort will be met with a response. It is learning if peace will follow a period of overload. These are the patterns that are laid down deep within the foundation of a person. Sometimes a baby who cried at every sound grows into an adult with incredible empathy. They become the person who notices someone's mood before they even speak. They are the ones who can read the atmosphere of a room in a single glance. For them, trust is built slowly, but once it is established, it is unbreakable. Sometimes a calm baby grows into an adult who brings stability to every space they enter. Their steadiness is not a lack of feeling, but a genuine internal strength. Neither of these paths is better than the other. They are simply different ways of being human. The next time someone labels a child as easy or difficult, try to hear it differently. One child has a wide window for stimulation, and the other has a narrow one. One adapts quickly, and the other needs more time to feel safe. One can absorb a lot before signaling, while the other signals the moment the world gets too big. This is not a diagnosis or a sentence. It is a description of a nervous system as unique as a fingerprint. When you stop asking why a child is so difficult and start asking what their brain is saying, everything shifts. There is less guilt and less fear and a much stronger sense of contact. What looked like an inconvenience begins to look like a conversation. What seemed like chaos begins to reveal a meaningful pattern. Nothing about these moments is accidental or meaningless. It is a developing human mind showing you its map before it even has the words to speak. If this video changed the way you look at the children in your life, please share your thoughts in the comments. Tell us which behavior finally makes sense to you now. Please subscribe, because there is so much more hidden in these ordinary moments than meets the eye.